Well, good morning. Happy spring. Almost spring. I'm getting excited about the garden season, and so today I wanted to talk about what crops I think are the easiest to grow. So I'm going to give you the top 5, give you the most bang for your buck, and easy for beginners. So if you're a beginner, or even if you're not a beginner and you just want crops that produce really well, here they are. This is specific to where I live, which is Colorado Mile High, but they could be easy to grow in other areas as well. You see that mug? Grow with the flow. I love it. Okay, all of these are easy, low maintenance items. Pretty much set it and forget it. So the first one is potatoes. Potatoes are one of my favorite things to grow because you can just literally take a potato and throw it in the ground and then end up with more potatoes. There's a few things to know. You want to have a decent amount of soil and you need a lot of water. So if your soil gets dry, you really won't get a ton of potatoes, but the more water, as long as you don't flood them, the better. They're not too picky, but they end up producing so many. And you want to know the fun part? You don't even have to go and get like potato slips. I have totally gotten potatoes from the store and they weren't even organic. I threw them in the ground and I ended up with more potatoes. And then over the year, what I do is I will use the potatoes from last year's garden to plant for this year. So here's how easy it is. All you do is you let your potatoes grow eyes. You can cut them up if you want smaller chunks and then throw it in the ground and let it go. The potatoes will have some green foliage for a while, and once that green starts dying back, that's when your potatoes are growing. Potatoes are the tubers or in the roots, so they are definitely a root crop, which means they're growing underground. So what you want to do as they're growing though is if you see them pop up through the surface, just cover them with a little layer of dirt so they don't turn green, but literally set them and forget them other than that. And come the fall, you will have a ton of potatoes. Last year I planted 3 or 4 potatoes from the year before and I ended up with, I want to say it was 25 pounds of potatoes. It was a lot of potatoes, and that's all the potatoes that my family needs, but you could do this on a much bigger scale. For reference, I grew those in just a 3.5 by 3.5 square space. That's it. Not a lot of space, but 25 pounds of potatoes came out of it. Potatoes can be grown in a variety of different ways. You could grow them in a raised bed like I do, or you could grow them just in the ground like Eden style, or you could just grow them in a container. So if you only have pots or containers, go for it. Just make sure to keep them fully hydrated so you end up with a great harvest. I have, however, found that russet potatoes are the potatoes that perform best, at least for me. I do like a Yukon Gold better, but I don't have as good of luck getting as big of a harvest of those. Next up is tomatoes. Tomatoes are one of my favorite things to grow because they are so easy. Depending on where you live, it might take a while to actually see a tomato turn red, but these are also very easy. You can start them inside, which makes it a little bit more complicated, but you really don't need to. I've found that sometimes the way they grow the best is when I just put a seed in the ground outside and then they take off. They know what they're doing, so put a seed in the ground, see what happens. There's a few tricks when it comes to tomatoes, but you really don't need to do too many things with them. A tomato is a vine, and so it's good to have it grow upwards, so a tomato cage is great, or some type of a stick that you can tie it to, just to keep it up and off of the ground. That's helpful. A lot of people talk about trimming suckers off, making the plant be not as big. I don't do that, and part of the reason is I live in a dry climate. If you lived in a moist climate, you'd probably want to cut off the suckers, which if you have your branch, it's the little thing that grows between the branch. So that just takes away energy from the plant. But take a seed, stick it in the ground, and watch it for a while. Of course, make sure that you have your soil that is healthy and fertilized and that you are giving your plants all the nutrients that they need. But if they're happy, they will grow and you will have a great harvest and even more than you need. Now, tomatoes, you don't need a ton of tomato plants. I usually try to plant around 5 tomato plants. That's my goal, is to have 5. Sometimes I end up with less, sometimes I end up with more. Last year I ended up with, I think, 6, and I have so many tomatoes I don't know what to do with. So if you're wanting tomatoes just to eat fresh, you probably only need 1 or 2 for a small family. But if you're wanting to can them up, maybe 5 or 6 for a small family. Or if you want to go crazy, plant as many as you have room for. Tomatoes can grow in pots or in raised beds. I actually grow my tomatoes in pots, but my pots I've buried into the ground a little bit. But I do them in containers. Now the smaller tomatoes, like a cherry tomato, they grow a lot faster and they ripen a lot faster. And in some areas, like here, I have a hard time getting really big tomatoes because we have a shorter growing season. So I try to stick with just like a mid-sized tomato. I don't try to go too big because we'll have frost before they turn red, or even before they get fully large enough. Now, if your tomatoes are green and you're getting a frost, just bring them inside and they will ripen inside, which is so fantastic. So every fall I have tons of tomatoes all through my kitchen because they are ripening and we've had a frost. That's just how it goes here in Colorado. Sometimes our first frost comes in September, which is a bit of a bummer for garden seasoning, but the tomatoes can withstand that just by being brought inside to ripen the rest of the way. Have you ever had a friend bring you a zucchini or a squash? There's a reason for that. These are so easy to grow and you get so many of them for just one plant. I've gotten dozens of zucchini from one plant in the past, and that is so many. The cool thing about zucchini is you take a seed, you only need one seed for one plant, but I like to always plant 2 seeds if I want to get one plant because you're never guaranteed to have a seed grow. But you take the seed, you put it in the soil, make sure you water it consistently, and you can pretty much set it and forget it if you have irrigation set up until it starts to grow. And they grow huge. They have beautiful flowers. You could go in and hand pollinate, but I've found that I really don't need to do that. They pollinate just fine on their own with all the critters outside. And I've tried a few different kinds of zucchini. I've tried the 8-ball zucchini, which is a round zucchini. Grows great, looks great, but has a ton of seeds inside. My favorite have been the just regular old green squash, like zucchini, and then this one's my ultimate favorite, yellow squash. And I like to use these specifically in curries. That's my favorite way to use them. But once you grow these, you will have so many zucchini you don't even know what to do with. The one thing to look out for though is if you're pruning it, don't prune it too much because that will kill your plant. I did that last year and that was the first time that ever happened. I put my plant in a different spot than I usually do and there just wasn't enough room for it, so I pruned it back and that killed it. In the past though, I have never had a zucchini plant die. They do, however, get powdery mildew towards the end of the season. And what I do then is I just cut the leaves off that have powdery mildews to not spread it to the other leaves. But they still continue to grow and do just fine, and I get a ton of zucchini. And I forgot to mention with the tomatoes and the zucchini, you can save the seeds. And each fruit has so many seeds inside that you could make so many more plants with just one single tomato or one single zucchini. Another easy item to grow are carrots. Now this is one that I got from My Gardener, and this is one where I saved seeds. So you can save seeds from carrots. So carrots will grow on the first year. All you do is you put the seeds in the ground and you let them grow. And then at the end of the growing season, you pull them up from the ground because they are also a root crop. And then you have your carrots. Water is good because that helps them to grow, and make sure not to have them planted too close together. If you see that they are coming up too close together, because the way I plant them is I just like sprinkle them around, you can just thin out the ones that are too close together and then you'll be just fine. The farther apart they are, the bigger they can grow. You don't want them so far, but as long as they have a carrot's amount of space, they can grow very big. And I get so many carrots. I didn't even grow carrots last year because I had so many carrots still from the year before. Now what you can do though is at the end of the season, you can leave some carrots in the ground and then they will bulb up the next year and you can save seed. Or you could just go purchase your seed, of course. But these are another set it and forget it. And then I love a good scavenger hunt. Any of those crops where you can pull it out of the ground, see what you got. So fun. The last easiest crop to grow are beans. Any kind of beans, but I prefer bush beans because they are a lot less work than a pole bean. Pole beans, you have to make sure to have them stay up on their trellis, and so you're like out there trying to make sure that they are doing that. But bush beans, you just set them and forget them. So same as everything else, take a seed, stick it in the ground, Make sure they're not too close together. Something I've noticed with all the kinds of beans that I've grown though is only about half of them germinate. So plant more than you think you need, and maybe plant them a little closer than you think they should be, just because you might not get all of them. Something that some people do is plant 2 seeds in every hole, and then if you get 2, just thin them out, which means remove one of the plants. But these are so easy. You stick them in the ground. Same with everything else. They still need water, and then they will just start to grow and grow. And these are last on my list because they do require a bit more maintenance, because once they start growing, they're growing, and you're out there every week or every few days getting green beans off of your plant, because the more you get the green beans off, the more it will start to produce more green beans. But these can produce so many, and you're just constantly out there harvesting, and that's so fun. I love when you have a crop that you just plant it and forget it. Now, I like to have all of my garden irrigated so that I don't have to go out there every day and water, but if that's something that you enjoy, or if that's the only option that you have, by all means do it. But if you don't have to go outside to water, these, set them and forget them, and then once a week or so, go out and pull all the green beans off, and there are tons of green beans. We had enough green beans for our meals for the entire year, just based off of the green beans that I planted last year. So green beans produce a bunch. It might take a while to find a specific variety that you like. I'm still looking for my favorite. Some varieties are a bit fuzzy, it seems. These are the jade bush beans, and they were fine. I'm still looking for a favorite, but these ones are so far the best that I have tried. Alrighty, are you getting excited? It is almost time. I am ready. These 5 that we just talked about are so easy. So go ahead, grab some seeds or some potatoes, throw them in the ground, see what happens. You're going to end up with a great harvest, and you will fall in love with gardening, because it is so rewarding to see the fruits of your labor, literally. Not to mention, can save you money, because you don't have to buy those items from the store. I have not bought green beans from the store, or potatoes from the store, or tomatoes from the store, aside from if I want a fresh tomato in the winter, in years, because I just grow them, and it is so rewarding. So what I want to know is, are you planning on growing a garden this year? If so, are you a beginner gardener, or how long have you been gardening? This is my 10th year gardening. It's my 8th year gardening in this house, and I am about ready to start. But also, what are your top 5 easiest things to garden? In what area do you live in? Because here in Colorado, we have a shorter season than a lot of areas in the world, and so we don't get to grow as many. But I want to hear all about it. Let me know down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here and you haven't yet, please subscribe. I'd love to see you. If you're interested in seeing just how big your harvest can be from not a very large garden, I will pop some links here of my harvest, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Come on. And you will fall in love with gardening. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. Hi, Milo. And you will fall in love with gardening because it is so rewarding. Oh my gosh.